Hi everyone, I'm Anthony Giuliano, and this is the Asher Marketing Podcast, Episode 3. Our guest tonight is Amanda Tokos. Amanda, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Amanda, we're going to start with something very relevant to tonight's conversation because your daughter was here with us. So tell us what it's like with back to school with your daughter's 10 years old, correct?
That is correct.
How is back to school going so far?
Really good considering, all things considering. She's very social, and she's been in camp all summer, so for her it wasn't that big of a transition. She was excited to see her friends. She's in 5th grade, so that's at the top of her school right now. That's a big deal. Things are a little bit different, but all in all, she's very flexible and adjustable, and she's an easygoing kid.
Well, good. That always helps.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that kind of determines our destiny professionally and otherwise is how our kids are doing. So glad to hear that she's doing well. Well, as you know, on this podcast, we talk about 3 things. We talk about the guest's career path, we talk about the organizations they work for, and we talk then about some of the projects they're working on, exciting, challenging, everything in between. And you're a little bit of a different type of professional than many of the guests we have, because we generally talk to people who work in marketing specifically. And while you have some marketing elements to the work you do, you also have broader professional experience than that. So really interested in hearing your perspective and about some of the things you're working on. So let's start with your career path. And I always tell people just start at the beginning, whatever that is for you. But am I correct that you grew up in Indiana, northern Indiana? Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and then where you went from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a lifelong Hoosier. Grew up in Fort Wayne. So I always thought I'd leave, but I'm still here and happy to be here. I started my career in entrepreneurship as a kid, like many other children, babysitting, pet sitting, lawn care, mowing lawns, shoveling snow, selling anything I could possibly convince someone to sell, whether it was lemonade, painted rocks, you name it, art that I made. So, but yeah, I went to IU and ultimately transferred back to IPFW, finished up my undergrad here in criminal justice, and then entered into my adult career, if you will, working for Allen County Adult Probation. My original interest was with juveniles, and so while I was in college, I did work at Crossroads Children's Home and Juvenile Detention Center, and I volunteered for the Women's Bureau with the Rape Crisis Hotline, things of that nature. So always kind of in that social work field, rehabilitation.
So what sparked your interest in criminal justice? How'd you end up in that field?
Honestly, it was I've always been intrigued with what makes people's brains tick, particularly with children, to be honest with you. I didn't have, maybe the easiest childhood like a lot of other people, and I think I overcame a lot of things, whereas, some people had a lot of difficulty, maybe they didn't get on that right path. And I always wanted to help other people. I wanted to bring as many people as I could on that path to success. And so I just became very intrigued with psychology, I would say, in high school, and was hoping to go down that road in college. And, there was a series of things, that you just don't control that kind of just led me, into criminal justice. Deciding to come back to Fort Wayne was a big part of that because they didn't have some of the programs here locally at that time that would have allowed me to kind of do what I wanted to do. So criminal justice was close enough, and I thought, okay, I'll work with troubled youth. And, originally was thinking I would get a job at Allen County Juvenile Probation, but they weren't hiring at the time, and I got hired in at Allen County Adult Probation as an investigator. Thought perhaps, at least I'd get my foot in the door, and then I could always move on. But quite honestly, what I realized is that people I was working with were just those kids grown up. So, it was okay. I felt like I was in the right place, and I just continued to embrace what I was doing, and then soon moved into the role of an actual probation officer. And I took on an interest again in those individuals, caseloads that were, maybe had backgrounds with mental illness or substance abuse. And as I started to take on those cases, and my supervisors noticed that I was interested in it, and took on more trainings, and whereas a lot of other people kind of didn't want those cases. So I gradually moved into a high risk supervised type of caseload, working primarily with a lot of your mentally ill offenders, and therefore, going to a lot more training and just getting more integrated within the community here and the different resources that were there to help those clients. And then that segued into committees and things of that nature. And I decided I wanted to maybe do more in my career. And that's what led me into looking at the federal aspect of criminal justice.
So all of this sounds like really challenging work, really hard work. Was it as difficult as it sounds?
I think it wasn't easy, because there's caseload work is there's a lot of deadlines, a lot of paperwork, a lot of follow through, and a lot of people. And people are so diverse and very, very unpredictable. But I love that kind of challenge. And I think it takes a certain kind of person to go into, criminal justice or social work, or, police officers, nurses, teachers, anyone that's in a field where they're working with a lot of different people. And it takes a lot of patience and empathy, and you're not getting burnt out. But yeah, it wasn't easy, but I enjoyed it when I was doing it, and wanted to do more. And so I looked at the federal division, and I thought, how do I get there? I want to do that, and I want to be with those people, because I thought that it sounded so cool when I was younger, in my 20s. And so I found out quickly that I needed to have a master's degree. And I was shocked, but I think that was pretty cool that they required that, because then that became my goal. And so I went back to get my master's degree at Indiana Wesleyan while working as a probation officer with Allen County.
And was it a master's in criminal justice?
It was in business management. They didn't have a lot of programs available at the time. I probably would have been more interested in something along the lines of, something, relative to human behavior. But I knew I needed to get it quickly. And there was a side of me that always thought I would want to own my own business someday. So it made sense, and it just worked with what was going on in my life. And that program itself is really focused on servant leadership and things, organizational structures, things of that nature. But it really didn't get super deep into...
So things that transfer to just about any career path, it sounds like. Yeah. So how long did you work? This is the fascinating part to me. How long did you work in that field? And then how do you get to a franchise owner from that career path? Yeah.
So it was a total of almost 16 years. So I moved over to the feds when I was 30, and I planned to retire at 50, which is in 2 years. So just so we get the timeline here, because maybe it'll wrap around with the rest of my story. But because I would have had a full pension, and at that point, that's really young, actually. Sure. At least to me right now.
The older I get, the younger it is.
Right? Yeah. So I planned to have my next career was going to be owning a business, so it would be an easy segue. But when I was I would say about 3/4 through the time that I spent with the feds, and I was a specialist, actually. So I primarily worked with mentally ill and violent offenders and sex offenders when I was with the feds. But I just happened to be in Chicago and kept hearing about massage envy, and more from a consumer base. And I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. I like massages. Do they have any, in Indiana? And I researched, and they had 5. And of course, they didn't have any in Fort Wayne. And like many people, I think, decide that they want to open up a business, it sometimes comes from a feeling of need, or not having something, being frustrated with something. And so I kind of just became more of a fantasy of, wow, maybe someone could bring a massage envy to Fort Wayne, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, maybe that could be me. Why not me? And then I thought, wait, it's too soon. So I just kept looking at it, and I kept talking, to my spouse at the time about it, and realized it was a franchise, and we just, kept looking at it for fun. And then it was also the same time I found I was pregnant with my daughter, so there was a lot of focus on that, and I was, of course, still working full time. And fast forward, I come home from the hospital from having my daughter, check the mail, couple days later, and there's a postcard, and it's from the regional developer for Massage Envy in the Indiana region, stating that she's going to be in Fort Wayne presenting about opening up this area for franchises. And I thought, oh, stars have aligned. Like this,
Yeah.
I've got to go. So I took my 3-day-old baby, because it was the next day, to this presentation, and listened, and was very intrigued. And my spouse at the time joined. He got there a little bit late, but he was there to hear most of it. And we were, genuinely intrigued, and moved forward with, talking with the regional developer. And so that was, my daughter was born in August 2010. And so by January 2011, purchased our first franchise license.
Wow.
And with the idea that I was going to hire someone, though, and they were going to run the business. I was going to keep my job and, retire at 50.
Sure.
And then, roll into that beautiful plan. And, because we can control everything. So, fast forward, it was probably September of 2011, and we started our build out, and it became very evident after talking with corporate and the regional developer that me or my spouse were really going to need to be involved full time. So he had been with his company for much longer than I had, and was making more money, and really, in terms of someone going in and running a massage establishment, it just made more sense for me to do that. So I decided to go ahead and leave my, retire, if you will, and put in my notice, which is very unexpected, to be honest with you. But I don't look back, and I don't regret it. I think it was the right decision. And flew out to Scottsdale, Arizona in September 17, 2011. And did their training, and by middle of October, I had hired 17 people to come on board, and we opened our doors on November 4th.
So for people who might not be familiar, you and I actually met as a result of you being a franchise owner for Massage Envy. So for people who are a little bit less familiar, what is Massage Envy? How would you describe it in a nutshell to someone who doesn't know about the franchise? Yeah,
they're a national franchise that have franchised the concept of a massage membership. In fact, they were, the pioneers. There's a lot of other franchises that also do that with massage, but they wanted to bring massage out of the elite and bring it in a way that was professional and convenient and affordable, and they were able to do that by creating that membership model.
Okay. So you mentioned that when you were a kid, you had kind of this entrepreneurial streak. Where do you think that comes from? Is that something that's just, you're born into? Is it something that's learned? Is it a combination of things? Because, it's something that sounds like you had at a very young age and stuck with you to the point where you ended up owning this franchise, even though you're on a different career path. So how do you put those pieces together when you're thinking through why you ended up where you did?
I love that you're asking that because I have this conversation with a lot of people. I really do think that it's something that you can teach your children. I don't think I was taught intentionally, though. I was actually raised by my dad in the 1970s, which is a little unusual. He was a blue-collar worker when he, never missed a day. I think he, at the end, he got a watch for 30 years of never missing a day. But, he was a really, really hard worker. And, and we worked alongside my dad. And, I saw that's a value, and I think that integrity was instilled young, but it was also, we had to kind of fend for ourselves. There was a lot that I had to do for myself, and it was just normal, and there was nobody, doing things for me all the time. So I think sometimes, as parents, we want to take care of our kids, and we don't want them to struggle, and we want them to have more than we have, but gosh, you get it. That's a fine line, because if you cross it, I think you're really enabling them, and you're squashing some of their potential to think for themselves and be, that cognitive development, that critical thinking, and realizing that, they can do it, because we need, it takes a lot of patience when they're saying, Mom, let me do it. I can do it, because it takes them, longer.
Yeah.
I get it. But I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I always say that, as a fellow child of the 70s, when people ask me, about my parents, I always say the best thing they ever gave me was nothing, because I had to figure it out on my own. So I think there's a lot of value in that, and that serves you well later in life, even if it's frustrating for all parties as you're going through it. All right, so you're a Massage Envy owner in 2011. Take us through that path, and then we'll segue into a conversation about what you're doing today.
Yeah. So 6 months later, bought 2 more licenses, ultimately did 3 build-outs, and then also acquired an existing location here in the Fort Wayne market. So I actually had one of our locations was in Mishawaka, 2 hours north. That was our second one. So it was kind of challenging. I had a toddler. I'm driving, 4 hours on the road, when I would make a trip there to kind of oversee the build out and get people hired and trained there, and just a lot of the ups and downs with any business, a lot of challenges, but that business did really well early on. And so over the course of 10 years, 4 locations, 4 babies, if you will, all very different, all, very different SWOT analysis, if you will.
What was the biggest challenge? Was it hiring? Was it marketing? Was it retention of customers? What would you say was the biggest challenge you faced?
For us, and definitely finding therapists. So it was more of the supply than it was the demand. The demand was there, and then at times if you didn't have the supply, then you would have customers that would be frustrated if you couldn't meet that demand. So and retaining employees, different professions have different types of turnover. So just finding unique ways to retain your employees as long as you possibly can, but knowing that there was a life cycle. People that go into the career of massage therapy many times have lots of other things going on. They're also very entrepreneurial, and many of them are women, and so they have families, and so they want to be able to have that flexibility and freedom of coming in and coming out of their career. So a lot of times, a lot of stop and go, and things of that nature.
Sure, understandable for them, but challenging for you as an owner. Yeah. So you've got at one point 4 locations, and take us from there as you progress as a Massage Envy franchise owner.
Yeah, wow, quite a journey, a lot of learning. When I first opened the first one, I took on the role of manager. I never said, I want to manage a massage business. That's not what I ever thought I would ever do in a million years. And people are like, oh, you know how to do massages? No, I didn't. I just knew I liked them. I hadn't even had very many professional massages, to be honest with you. So I had a lot of things to learn on the business side and also on the industry. I think the biggest transferable skill sets, though, came from my past careers. People have said, well, how could you possibly go from everything you were doing in law enforcement and go into massage industry? There's so many skill sets that are transferable. It's really just being able to relate with people, whether it's customer or the employees, being able to listen and honestly care about your employees, care about your customers. And I realized that I didn't have the time to care about all of them all of the time, though. So I had to have other people in place. I had to be able to delegate. I had to be able to spend time with people and train them to delegate, and then trust that they were doing what I needed them to do. And then I realized that I really just needed to put my energy into my employees, because if you're caring about your employees, they'll care about your customers. And of course I was still involved, with the customers when needed to be, but I had to start scaling out of the business and be able to grow and open up the other locations. And that was challenging, but it was a challenge that I really liked. I made mistakes, but I think also owning up as an owner, recognizing that you do make mistakes, and being honest with yourself and your employees. But 2 wrongs don't make a right. I mean, just because you make a mistake doesn't mean you got to keep doing it. Yeah. So just constantly reassessing, reevaluating, and doing things better, and listening to your employees and your customers, and trying to grow from that. And it just became, you just keep scaling, and and then right when you think you have everything perfect, then things change. And so you have to be really adaptable and not be overly responsive to things. Sometimes it's sometimes easy to take things personal when it's your business, and that was something I learned over time too. Is it's just not personal. It's not all personal, so I grew as my businesses grew.
Well, good. So based on that growth, let's talk about where you are today, because you learned a lot. You learned about hiring employees. You learned about retaining employees. You learned about customer service. You learned about marketing. You learned about all this stuff. And that translated to one of the businesses you're involved today, because you have a complex professional life. So take us from the 20,000 foot level. Talk about the different roles you play today and what's involved a little bit in that work.
Yeah. So sold my businesses to my partner, if you will, about a year ago. And I had started up my own company, consulting company, brokering and consulting company in the franchise industry. And I had never been on that flip side.
So this is really helping to find, helping people who might have an interest in owning a business, helping them find a right match with a franchise. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And that's a little bit where Asher and you have intersected, because Asher, over the years, we've worked with a number of franchise businesses, including Massage Envy, including Fantastic Sam's, including Subway. And it's a really unique world, the franchise world. So talk a little bit about what you do, your role as a franchise consultant, and then the other roles that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I chose to partner with a brokering company because it allowed me to have access to a portfolio of franchises across the country, as well as to have that collateral contact with other brokers, as well as that company itself, their training, just their marketing, et cetera, their name. And so I did partner with a franchise consulting company. They're based out of Miami, Florida, but their brokers work nationwide. There's about 150 of us, 150, but also we're in other countries now as well. But we have several hundred franchises in our portfolio. We're one of the largest in the country. Of course, there's others that offer these types of portfolios, but I joined with them, and essentially I work with clients who are looking to find a good match. There are some clients who are serial entrepreneurs and have owned many businesses, but maybe never a franchise, or maybe they have owned multiple franchises. I mean, I have clients who own over 100 units, as well as individuals who have never owned a business in their entire life. They're still working in maybe law enforcement or corporate America, or maybe they just retired, or maybe they got let go, or maybe they're going to get let go. And we've had a lot of that happen recently in these last several months,
Sure.
without a doubt, and a lot of it unexpected. But a lot of people, or maybe they're just trying to diversify their portfolio, have a plan B. So clients, they don't know where to start maybe, or they don't have the time. It can become overwhelming in that search. Most people go straight to the internet, you start Googling, and next thing you know is they start getting all these calls because they filled out some information. They don't realize it's actually marketing company, not necessarily the franchise. Or they say, hey, I emailed Chick-fil-A and I never heard back from them. I'm like, yeah, well, good luck with that. But, they don't understand how it works.
Sure.
So, part of my role is also educating, and mentoring, but also a big part of that is finding that match. And really, it's not just because Chick-fil-A's amazing company, and they are, doesn't mean it's a good match for someone. So there's a lot of things that people need to understand. Just like me, I thought Massage Envy, I was going to keep running my business. So that there was something that didn't happen in that match. Fortunately, I still think I made a good decision. I think it's a good company for me, but I got lucky. There are some people that if they're matched with the wrong business or wrong career, they may not be as successful or as happy as they hoped to be.
So what were some of maybe the two or three top lessons that you learned as a franchise owner that you try to instill in prospective franchise owners?
Yeah, absolutely. And one is matching a client to the right kind of business model.
Yeah.
So, there's home-based models, there's van-based models, there's, brick and mortars. But even within those models, there's a lot of intricate details that if I can identify my clients' personal, professional, financial wants and needs and bandwidths, I can match them with a model, and all those little details to ensure that, they're not wasting their time then. And what I love is when I do a presentation, they go, wow, I like all of them. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And that doesn't happen 100% of the time, but
Sure.
Ideally they're walking away with at least a couple that they're wanting to take the next step.
And there's quite a variety as far as entry points in terms of dollars that,
Absolutely.
that are required to start a franchise.
So knowing that, so a lot of pre-qualification as well, as well as territory check.
Yep.
Doesn't do any good to go, look at a concept if they're not even in that territory.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So you also there's another facet to your professional life in addition to your work with the franchise consulting company. Talk a little bit, if you're comfortable, about the work you're doing in the construction world.
And
now for something completely different.
Completely different. And I got contacted by someone that I had actually worked with through a Massage Envy back in January of 2019. He had reached out to me, and he was in the construction industry, and he wanted to meet with me. And I thought, he saw what I'm doing, and maybe he thinks I can bring him clients to do build-outs for their new franchises. But that wasn't it at all. He had actually began working with Lauren Bunnell here in Fort Wayne community, who has many years in the construction industry, a lot of respect. So Jeff Krasik is who had reached out to me, and he also has many years in the industry, and they had started a company where they were working, not doing the construction, but providing expertise for people who were actually in need of having construction for commercial projects, large projects, whether it's, hospitals, hotels, airport, colleges, high schools, parking garages, banks, large. So
complex projects.
Yeah, complex projects that were going to cost, hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And sometimes if it's, tax dollars money, nobody wants to spend more money than they need to, or perhaps the more money, if you know that you have extra dollars, maybe you're going to allocate it into, maybe another part of that project. So JUSTcm was born out of that ideology that Lauren and Jeff had with being able to bring more value to the owner for a project, so that they are able to make good decisions as they're moving forward in that project. And there really needs to be a lot of estimations and project knowledge and project management to go into that to ensure that that's happening. And so I had really no knowledge of the construction industry other than, I did 3 build-outs, don't get me wrong. But I didn't understand it from that perspective, and I really appreciated what they were doing. I think it came out of more of a philanthropic ideology from Lauren and wanting to do something good for people. And because I think he was pretty much into retirement, but he started kind of doing this, as a friend, as a favor for people. And, Jeff recognized that, hey, we really could do something with this. Yep. And they started partnering and also brought Beth in, and it's just their idea continued to grow. And I think with the team there's just such a strong emphasis of goodness and wanting to, empower clients and, definitely make sure that people are getting what they're paying for. So
it seems like an opportunity that you didn't really need the extra job, if you will, but
no,
it was kind of too good to turn down.
Well, they suggested that I come and join their team as an employee, and I said, well, I've got this business. I didn't want to give that up. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I really do, and I love making that impact on people's lives. But I also love what they were doing, and so we kind of came up with an arrangement on how I could kind of be involved and in that development of the business and marketing, which is how then I reached out to you and wanted to pick your guys' brains and looking at the name and how do we reach our audiences and what's our message. And our message obviously was empowering our clients and controlling costs, but just we're still in the launching phase of that. They actually are working on some projects, but with our small bandwidth kind of moving forward, but we're working on our LinkedIn, our webpage, and things like that, and hopefully want to bring Asher into that as we as we get our footing. But
yeah, well, one of the things that I want to hear about is how you balance all this stuff, because you've got a 10-year-old daughter, you've got a business of your own. There's in normal times there's some travel with that. You've got another business that you're trying to help get launched, and I'm sure there's other interests you have. I tell people all the time, because I have a similarly blissfully complex professional life. And you just kind of concede that it's going to be chaos at some point. You say, no, this isn't going to be a normal 9-to-5 job, but I love it, so I'm going to do all of it. Is that true for you, or how do you make sense of all of this?
Yeah, and it's funny that you're asking me that, because that I will tell you, I started putting even more on my plate. I wanted to get involved with Greater Fort Wayne, and I have been in contact with them, and I've sat on their committees, and I recently reached out to them and said I'm going to need to step back just for a minute, but they had kind of taken a rest as well due to COVID.
Sure.
And I want to make sure that when I am involved in something, I'm adding value.
Yep.
That's really, really key to me. On the other side of that is it's really important to stay focused, and I can get caught up in that like many other people, and I start to lose focus and become basically a jack of all trades, master of none.
Sure.
And I started doing that with my own business, and because I was looking at, I'm looking at a lot of other things. I've got a lot of, I'm wanting to learn and grow right now. I'm very intrigued with franchise development on that level. I'm intrigued with business acquisition. I'm intrigued with investing right now. And so I've got a lot of books that I've bought that I haven't read, read, and I've been on a lot of Zoom calls, and I've looked at a lot of other types of investment opportunities. I'm interested in regional development, and I said to myself, gosh, I even had friends saying, Amanda, you need to get focused.
Yeah.
And so I did. I had to back up, and I had to get focused, and so most of my time right now is back with franchise consulting, undoubtedly, but there's still some other things that I'm working on.
Yeah, it's good to be curious, and sometimes you can be your own worst enemy if you're curious about too many different. This is something I have to tell myself every day: is you don't have to necessarily chase every cat up every tree, because eventually you're not going to catch any of them.
Right.
So I find myself, I'll have 3 books that I'm reading at any given time, but I'm only reading a third of them collectively. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the stuff you're working on now that's most interesting to you, exciting, challenging. What are the top items on your to-do list, and what's the status of those? How are you working through some of the major projects and work that's in front of you right now?
Yeah, I think for the franchise consulting company, it was really figuring out how to diversify my lead source, and I think I've figured that out, and I'm building that pipeline up, and I've got a great pipeline of clients that I'm working with that I'm very busy with right now.
So is that getting a better quality of folks in your funnel? Is it getting a larger quantity? Is it a little bit of both?
It's both.
Okay.
It's definitely both.
And how does that generally happen? Is that cold leads from the internet? Is that through your parent company? How does that work?
Every broker consultant's a little bit different. I have never been one to be a cold caller, but I think you've got to have a component of that. You definitely can. I definitely can buy leads. I've taken a more of a warm approach through resumes, because I understand what it is to do career transitioning, and so that's an easy conversation for me. But I do get some leads from the franchise consulting company. LinkedIn has been a great source, so really having a presence there has been big. Being real, and going out, and I actually actively look for I target the kind of clients that I'm looking for, and there's 2, and one is going to be that person that's transitioning out of their career, and with maybe even an emphasis lately on law enforcement. Okay. Because I understand them, and I know that there's a lot of people looking to change. But the other one is multi-unit franchise owners. I get them. I can connect with them very easily, and understand them, and put concepts in front of them based upon what they're currently doing, what they want to do, and make sure that there's no non-competes and things of that nature with the businesses that they currently have going on. But
So refining that a little bit right now and trying to make sure that you have the right kind of pipeline and you're helping the right types of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just figuring out marketing. I mean, I wrote a couple articles for the Franchise Journal, just to kind of put myself out there. I need to do more of that probably, but, that's time, trying to have that bandwidth.
Yeah, I've never met anyone who needs to do less marketing, right? It's always
Right.
one of those things where you can keep doing it, and
Right.
it just never seems like you are able to take advantage of every opportunity that's out there. But as long as you hit most of your marks, you're pretty good. So what else? In addition to the pipeline stuff, what are you working on that's interesting to you now, or even challenging to you now?
I call it Project Me. I'm the project. I'm reinventing myself. I didn't plan to be where I'm at in terms of, I thought I would still be running my Massage Envies, and that's okay.
Well, it sounds like you thought at one point you'd still be in the probation world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, back it up, and I should have still been in federal probation. I should be retiring in 2 years. So I tell everyone, my Project Me is set for at age 50. I should have figured it out for this, but I'm going to live to be 103. So I have lots of things. I mean, really.
So why 103 and not 100?
I don't know.
Just,
I've always said it.
more interesting than 100.
I don't know when
Yeah.
I came up with that number.
Yeah.
Probably when I was younger, and
Yeah.
so I've stuck to it because I'm committed.
Yeah.
And
'Cause that's how it works. As long as you commit to an age.
So and that's why 50 is Project
Yeah.
Me, and really Project Me is all about being open and learning more about things that maybe I would have never considered. And when I say be open, so as things such as JUSTcm and construction, I mean, I've never said I want to learn about construction, but this isn't about construction. This is about people and doing something good for people in the community. And I love that. I can get behind that every day. And so be it. It's construction. So fine, I'll learn about construction. I'm good with that. Same with, developing businesses, franchise development in itself, like learning how does one come up with a business concept and then they franchise it. Well, that's a whole different monster, if you will. You can't, you may be good at coming up with a business and running it, and then you go and franchise it, but taking it out to market, completely different. And I'm so intrigued, and I'm learning so much about it, and I would really like to, at some point, go into that a little bit more. But even, like I said, learning about acquiring businesses.
Yeah.
Like, I'm intrigued with that too. And somehow, I would love to connect all the dots between franchise development, business acquisition, real estate investment, and construction. And so I may not have all that done in 2 years, but I think in 2 years I will at least know what path I'm on.
Well, people talk a lot about 5-year plans. I don't believe in 5-year plans. I believe in 5-year goals, right? And then if you're motivated enough, you'll figure out a plan. But too much changes. I mean, look at 2020. Who would have ever predicted we'd be doing what we're doing today?
Yeah.
But if you stay focused on where you want to be, you'll find a way to get there. The plan may change, but if you're motivated enough, you'll figure out how to get it done.
And if you wait for everything, all the stars to align, and you to have all your question answered, and for everyone to tell you it's okay, you're never going to do it.
Correct. And as you've alluded to, success or self-discovery, whatever you want to call it, is really a matter not of having all the answers. It's asking better questions and really embracing what you don't know and having a growth mindset and saying, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And I'm going to be really humble about what I know, because the minute I think I have it figured out is the minute I'm going to find out I'm wrong.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And, I say jump and grow your wings as you're flying.
Yeah, which is kind of scary, but it's the better way ultimately.
But it's believing in yourself. And if you've been through anything in life that's been difficult and come out of it on the upside, feeling stronger, and I'm not talking about being richer, but being stronger and knowing what you're capable of, then you can do it again.
For sure. Well, let's talk about, there's anything else, any other projects, and then I want to get to some quick hit questions. Any other projects or anything else that you're working on right now that's especially noteworthy or interesting to you?
Probably putting my lawn furniture up. If someone wants to come over and help me. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Okay. Well, it's getting to be that time of year, unfortunately. So, all right. So if anyone wants to help Amanda with her lawn furniture, call us at 888 Cashier Agency.
Yeah.
All right, so here are the 3 quick hit questions, and we kind of are figuring this out as we go, but Brian Engelhardt, who is our first guest, we found a nice way to sort of end the conversation, kind of revisiting what we've discussed, but in a very, very specific and very focused way. So first question I want to ask has to do with career path. And any advice you would have for someone just getting started out in their career, and you can focus it if you want on a prospective franchise owner, a prospective entrepreneur, whatever is interesting to you, what advice do you have when it comes to people figuring out their career path, something that's going to make them fulfilled and successful in the long run?
I would say it's definitely, network and respect the people within your network. Don't burn bridges. Just because you think you might be able to do something better. Someone that has been in the industry and had the experience, their challenges in that industry are going to be very different than what yours are because you weren't there 20 years ago. You don't know what they've overcome. You can learn a lot from a mentor and someone else that's been in that industry for a very long time. So be open-minded and give back. If you're looking forward at a mentor who's helping you, you should also be having somebody that you're helping behind you, because that very same person someday may also be there, may be a part of your business. Because many of the business owners that I talk with, when I hear their stories, which is my favorite part of what I do, is just hearing their story. I love it, literally love it. I should write a book someday, but I will. Actually, that's on my list, but it's way down. But
that's like when you're 93.
Yeah, maybe 83.
Maybe 83.
Maybe
okay.
83.
All right.
But I love hearing about how people are telling me that they were building people within their teams, and later on or they worked with them and they managed them or whatever, they trained them, and they later on brought that person into their business as their director of ops, and now that person is also part owner of some of the businesses. Or I've talked to people who are now franchisees or people that are wanting to buy more franchises, and that's actually how they came into what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think those relationships are so integral, and we just need to value one another and what we bring to the table, and be open-minded, and read. If somebody wants you to read something, read it. Even if it's not something you normally would read it if you have the time.
And I would say especially if it's not something you would normally read.
Yeah.
To challenge some
Get
of those
out
presumptions.
of your bubble.
Yeah, for sure.
And say yes to maybe things you would normally say no to, and maybe start saying no to some of the things you've been saying yes to, so you have more time to say yes to those other things.
Yeah, one of the things I find that a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this myself, is we continue to read the stuff we already know to sort of validate the knowledge we already have, and that's not nearly as challenging and ultimately as good as reading stuff that's outside your comfort zone. So
Right.
yeah, and the relationship piece, I agree with that 100%. I always tell people that anything good that's ever happened to me is the direct result of a relationship, and the way you build relationships is by giving back. I mean, honestly, I believe that the path to success is helping other people be successful. If you do that, everything else kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah.
So second quick hit question, if somebody stopped you on the street and said, tell us about, in your case, the organizations you work with, Franchise Consulting Company and JUSTcm, how would you describe them in a brief phrase?
I would say if you're looking to open up a business or have a career change and you don't know exactly what that is today, but you're thinking about it, now's the time to talk to me, because there's no contract. It's not going to hurt you to have that conversation, and so I think talking with someone who has the industry experience, who's willing to get to know you and help you through that path. If you've got someone out there like that to help you do that, then you utilize them. I'm a resource, and so I think franchise consulting and brokers can definitely help individuals that are looking, whether they already have businesses or they've never done it before. I think there's a lot of value in it, and there's no difference if you're price wise. If you're looking at buying a franchise, the investment range is no different if you're using a consultant / broker versus going directly to the franchise. So there's really no reason why you wouldn't do that, assuming your broker adds some value. As for JUSTcm, I don't know why anyone wouldn't utilize their services, because they're going to get more bang for their buck. They're going to know where the costs are. They're going to know how to allocate money, and they're probably going to be able to save a lot of money because otherwise, without having that price estimation from somebody that's not directly involved in the project, you're not going to know what you're truly spending. And so I think JUSTcm brings a service that empowers the client. And that's why the mission statement is empowering clients and controlling costs. It is truly an objective means of controlling your $100 million project, $1 billion project, especially if this is something, for the city, tax dollars. You should be concerned about that. You should want to save money, or at least make sure that money is being spent how you want it to be spent.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Yeah.
Pretty simple stuff. All right, so the last one, and maybe the most challenging, right now there's a lot of anxiety among professionals, regardless of where people work. There's a lot of challenges people are facing. But if you step back and you look at the big picture, and somebody came to you with concerns, they were worried about the state of their business, they were worried about how to tell their story or how to connect to their customers, what's some advice you might give to another professional about making it through these challenging times that we're in?
I think reminding people how resilient we are as people, and touching on that level of humanity, we will overcome anything if we put our minds to it. And I think that the more that we encourage each other and hold each other up and empower each other, remind each other that this too shall end and good things will come. I mean, the sun's going to shine, and try to see the positive. And you know what? With every adversity, there are opportunities, and sometimes you have to look for them. And we cannot control everything, but we definitely can control how we respond to things, and we can control how we learn from things and how we grow from them.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that is a great note on which to end. And also, your daughter has done a great job of sitting still and giving us about an hour of time without needing anything from you. So we will let you get back to her. Amanda, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. It's been great talking with you. And thanks, everyone, for listening to the Asher Marketing Podcast. We look forward to our next guest, Jennifer Roberts, who will be joining us next week. Until then, thank you very much, and have a great week.